I never imagined a single evening could hit me with a memory so sharp it made my chest ache while I stood in my own living room, sipping lukewarm coffee. My phone buzzed again, and I almost ignored it, but the name on the screen made my fingers freeze. Mom. The apartment smelled faintly of jasmine from the candle I'd lit hours ago. My silk blouse felt impossibly soft against my skin, but nothing could cushion the sting that came with remembering that day. The day I found my life packed into garbage bags while Dad stood there with my younger siblings, arms crossed, looking almost bored. "You're 25. Get out." The words hadn't just pushed me out of the house. They had tried to push me out of my own skin. I had built a life of careful successes since then, one that I could post about online without revealing the full story. My apartment was a sanctuary, floor-to-ceiling windows, warm wood floors, books stacked haphazardly yet with intention, a painting I'd bought after my first solo exhibition. No one from my past knew this version of me. Yet here was Mom, insisting on a phone call, and with it, a tug at a memory I'd tried to tuck away neatly. I inhaled the faint scent of coffee and jasmine together, and for the first time in years, I allowed myself to feel that pang of betrayal. My fingers brushed the screen as I swiped to answer, heart pounding, a cocktail of fear, pride, and something almost like curiosity buzzing beneath the surface. I remember the day vividly, even down to the scent of detergent lingering on my childhood carpet. I had just turned 25, a milestone that Dad apparently decided was my expiration date. I was still trying to laugh it off, holding my carefully packed boxes when he barked, "You're 25. Get out." I froze. My hands shook as I clutched a small framed photo of my grandmother and me, the one she had given me on my 18th birthday. "You're stronger than you think," she had whispered. I had clung to that phrase through every challenge, but standing there, confronted by my father's cold dismissal, I felt every bit the failure they wanted me to be. My younger siblings hovered awkwardly, unsure whether to intervene or side with Dad. The humiliation was sharp, like shards of glass pressing into my chest. Each bag, heaped with my belongings, books, clothes, little keepsakes from my life, was a reminder that my family had boxed me into someone disposable. Tears pricked my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. Instead, I swallowed the lump in my throat and reminded myself of my grandmother's words. I refused to beg for acceptance or explanation. I refused to shrink further. That day, I made a decision. If they couldn't see my worth, I would create my own life on my terms. I walked out of the house with nothing but a backpack, a few cherished keepsakes, and a heart full of stubborn resolve. Every step toward the street was a step toward freedom, every breath a declaration that I would not be defined by their rejection. That evening, sitting on a park bench as the city's lights flickered to life, I opened the photo of my grandmother again. I whispered to her, "I'll make you proud. I'll make myself proud." That was the first night of my independence, the night I began to build a life invisible to the eyes that had tried to discard me. Leaving my childhood home didn't come with a roadmap. I had no safety net, no guarantee that the world outside my parents' house would welcome me. What I did have, though, was stubborn determination and that small photo of my grandmother, a daily reminder that strength could be cultivated, not demanded. I took a tiny studio apartment in the city, its peeling paint and squeaky floors a far cry from the manicured perfection of my family's house, but it was mine. I worked odd jobs at first, waiting tables, answering phones, anything that kept the lights on, but I never lost sight of the dream that had been simmering in the background since that night on the park bench. I wanted to create, to craft a life that was fully mine, to prove that rejection didn't equal worthlessness. It wasn't long before I met Marjorie, a seasoned art gallery owner who saw something in me that I had buried under layers of self-doubt. "Talent and persistence are rare together," she said, eyes sharp but warm. She became my mentor, introducing me to clients, guiding me through the ins and outs of exhibitions, teaching me the language of negotiation and visibility. Under her guidance, I learned that every small victory mattered. The first client who commissioned my work, the first gallery that displayed my paintings, the first check I deposited that made me realize I could finally be financially independent. But I kept it all a secret from my family. They didn't need to know that the girl they discarded was now standing on her own 2 feet, stronger than they could imagine. I posted the occasional vague update online, enough to appear modest, careful to avoid details that might alert them to my real success. My apartment became a sanctuary of creativity, canvases stacked in the corners, sunlight pouring over sketches on the floor, the faint aroma of coffee lingering as I painted late into the night. Even in moments of triumph, self-doubt whispered, "Will they ever understand? Will I ever forgive?" But each completed painting, each satisfied client, each tiny milestone whispered back louder, "You are enough. You've always been enough." I felt pride in the quiet, the uncelebrated victories that fueled the woman I was becoming, independent, resilient, and quietly unstoppable. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, Samantha Blake became someone entirely new. Not defined by the harsh words of her father, the dismissive stares of her siblings, or the life she had been forced to leave behind. She became her own masterpiece, layered with struggles and triumphs, and fiercely protective of the life she had fought to build. The knock at my apartment door was deliberate, insistent. I had expected it one day, but not like this. Not on a Tuesday evening, when the city hummed softly outside, and I was mid-brushstroke on a canvas. When I opened the door, there they were. Dad, flanked by my younger siblings and Mom hovering behind, trying to appear casual. The sight of them made my chest tighten, a blend of old hurt and simmering curiosity. They stepped inside hesitantly, eyes scanning my apartment as if searching for some sign of the struggling woman they had imagined I would be. Instead, they found sunlight spilling over wooden floors, paintings stacked elegantly against the walls, and the faint aroma of coffee and turpentine mingling in the air. I could see disbelief flicker across their faces as they noticed the crisp prints of my work, the framed exhibition certificates lining the shelves, and the subtle touches of an independent life I had built from scratch. I set my brush down and gestured to a chair. "Sit," I said, voice calm, almost gentle, but underneath it hummed the weight of years of frustration and determination. They shuffled awkwardly, taking in every detail of the space: the mid-century desk I had saved for months to afford, the bronze sculpture on the mantel, the first painting I had ever sold leaning against the wall, signed and dated. I let the silence stretch, allowing them to absorb the scene. Their mouths opened, closed, and opened again, searching for words that wouldn't come. And then I spoke. "I wanted you to see it for yourselves. Every brushstroke, every sleepless night, every penny saved, all of it was because I decided I was worth it. I didn't just survive, I thrived." Dad's jaw tightened. My siblings exchanged glances of shame and awe, and Mom's hand twitched toward her purse, perhaps searching for an explanation or a defense. I continued, my voice steady, holding their gaze. "I own a gallery partnership now. I have clients across the country. This apartment, my career, my life, it's mine. And it's beautiful because I built it without anyone's approval." I watched the disbelief settle over them, the shift from the family that had once dismissed me to the reality of who I had become. Dad's eyes flickered with something unspoken, perhaps regret, perhaps realization. My siblings looked as though they were seeing me for the first time, the little sister they thought powerless, now a force they couldn't ignore. It wasn't about revenge. It never had been. It was about truth. And this truth, the culmination of years of struggle, growth, and resilience, finally stood in front of them, undeniable and unapologetic. I let the silence linger for a moment, letting them feel the weight of the truth. This wasn't a confrontation for theatrics, it was a reckoning. I had the upper hand now, not through anger or spite, but through the life I had carved with my own hands. "Before anyone asks," I began, voice calm but firm, "I'm willing to have a relationship with you all, but it will be different. I won't be defined by the past, and I won't allow old patterns to dictate the present." Their eyes widened, as if they had expected me to beg for forgiveness or explanation. They had underestimated me once. They wouldn't again. I turned to Dad first. "If you want to be part of my life, I need honesty. No more dismissive comments, no more belittling, no more trying to control my decisions. You miss my 20s. I won't let you miss the next decade of my life. His lips pressed into a thin line, but he nodded slowly, the weight of guilt clear in his eyes. My siblings shifted nervously. I softened slightly, recalling how small they had seemed back then, yet capable of growth. You too, I said, gesturing to them. If you want a meaningful connection, I need you to stop viewing me as the failure I was supposed to be. Support each other, pursue your passions, and stop trying to compete with one another. Life is too short for jealousy or resentment. They looked ashamed but attentive, absorbing the gravity in my tone. Mom's gaze flicked to the photo of my grandmother still sitting on my desk. I allowed a small smile. And you, Mom, I need you to respect my boundaries. I won't tolerate guilt-tripping or passive aggression. I want a relationship based on mutual respect, not control or regret. Her lips trembled slightly, a mixture of relief and remorse washing over her. Finally, I took a deep breath and let it settle in the room. I'm willing to help where I can, I continued, but this help comes with conditions. You each need to commit to change, to growth, to healing. You need to pursue your dreams, shed toxic habits, and learn to see the people you love as equals, not liabilities. I saw it then, the mix of fear, realization, and hope dawning on their faces. This wasn't punishment, it was accountability, tempered with compassion. For the first time in years, I felt the quiet satisfaction of power used wisely, not vengefully. I had the upper hand, yes, but the choice to allow them back in was mine, and it would only be on my terms. For the first time since that humiliating day with the garbage bags, I felt a sense of calm authority. I wasn't angry anymore. I was empowered, unapologetically me, and ready to define the relationships I wanted to have, not the ones they thought I deserved. Weeks passed after the confrontation, and the changes, though subtle, were undeniable. Dad stopped dropping snide remarks, and actually called to ask about my work. My siblings, once distant and competitive, began sharing their achievements and seeking my advice, genuinely curious rather than resentful. Even Mom, with her cautious warmth, made an effort to understand the woman I had become, rather than the daughter she thought she knew. I watched these transformations with a quiet satisfaction, not prideful arrogance, but a deep, grounding contentment. The girl who had been pushed out at 25 had grown into a woman who could hold space for both forgiveness and boundaries. I still felt the sting of past wounds, but it no longer defined me. The strength my grandmother had believed in all those years ago had become my reality, woven into every brushstroke, every decision. Every morning I woke knowing my life was mine. One evening, I placed the small framed photo of Grandma back on my desk, next to a painting I had recently sold. I traced her face with my finger and whispered, "I did it, just like you said I could. I'm proud of myself, and I'm proud of the life I built." The memory of her soft, encouraging voice seemed to echo in the room, filling me with warmth and closure. I realized that my journey wasn't about proving anyone wrong. It was about proving myself right, about reclaiming dignity, forging independence, and surrounding myself with people willing to grow alongside me. I had created a life that no one could discard, a life I would never apologize for. As I looked out the floor-to-ceiling windows at the city lights, sipping the last of my evening coffee, I smiled. The past was a chapter, painful yet necessary, and the present was a canvas I was painting on every day. I was no longer the girl whose belongings were tossed into garbage bags. I was Samantha Blake, fully alive, fiercely independent, and unapologetically strong. And as the city hummed beneath me, I whispered to the universe, a quiet but powerful affirmation. I am enough, I always have been, and I will always choose myself. Bottom of form.